good evening and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast. My name is Rodney.
And my name is Zach.
It's good to talk to you, Zach, although we're both a couple of husky boys today.
So husky. Oh, man.
So husky.
Formula One. So cool.
I smoked those 100 cigarettes. No regrets. No regrets.
Now who's rapping? Smoke those 100 cigarettes. No regrets.
When you rhyme regrets with regrets, I don't know that I'm exactly killing it in the rapping scene there, not like you earlier, but that'll never be captured again. That was lightning in a bottle, and unfortunately we hit record just minutes too late.
Exactly. Oh, did you have can you remember the race at all? It's been a few days. Thank you so much for everybody's patience between
yes.
Italian Grand Prix and the recording and posting of this episode. We always appreciate it. I obviously was in Italy, but not at the race. But, I swung by relatively close to Milan just to see if I could hear the cars. But they're so quiet these days that I couldn't. So, I tried my best, Rod. I tried my best. What do you expect from me?
That's your best? Okay. No, I'm not going to give you crap about going to the country that the race was on and not going to the race. It's a little bit 2017.
I lost track of the days so much so that on Sunday at 5 o'clock, I didn't know what day it was. And I said to a friend there that I was like, oh, sweet. Actually, we're not doing much tomorrow. I should be able to catch the Formula One race. He's like,
finished, mate.
Wasn't that today? And I was like, no, it would have been qualifying day. He's like, it's 5 o'clock on Sunday. I was like, oh, and I'm the one with the podcast. I should know how the race weekends work. But that was fine.
It meant that and you're like, what year is it?
Ferrari won at Monza. It must be 2010?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was good because I managed to stay out of all the social media stuff, and I managed to. When I watched the race, I still had no idea who won, so it was great.
Yeah. That is a treat, I'll tell you. That is a damn treat. Well, our job this week is to talk about the Italian Grand Prix, recap it, even though it was over a week ago. It's still fresh in our memories and hearts. I'm going to say. We're going to have a look at the Fantasy League. We've got a super quiz for later. And to get us in the mood to talk about the Italian Grand Prix, still fresh in all our minds, I've got an Italian intro that I have hurriedly written before we started recording. Let's give it a chance. Let's lower those expectations now. Okay. You can't swing a cat in Italy without hitting a racing track, and the only one we're interested in is Monza, the temple of speed, the track that's had more combinations than there are letters in the word combinations. With 16 grande curvers, Monza might be past its prime, but it still knows how to show a bunch of good-looking young roosters a good time. And it's here that our 20 F1 drivers settle the score over who's the fastest on four wheels, and to be dubbed the true speed demon. So pull over, boy, and get your ticket right. It's time to boot it to Italy.
That was very good. I thought for just on a whim, I reckon there's every chance you didn't actually write anything. You just made that up on the spot. And if that's the case, amazing.
You got me. No regrets, no regrets.
No cigarettes, no regrets.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that, let's get into the race recap.
Let us race a bit. I gave him space.
Suck my bones, man.
Let's hurry up and get out of here. We got a race to do.
Mm-hmm. Friday rhymes with my day. Is that a thing as well?
I mean, I suppose so. What's my day?
I don't know. It's a rap thing I'm working on. You wouldn't understand.
Oh, sweet.
Zach's the Italian Grand Prix. Obviously, it's one of those races where there's like 3 corners or something, but it was an interesting race and there were a few little things that happened. So to get us across in general what happened in the Italian Grand Prix, we usually start off with a 30-second recap. I did have to check the record books, but it is my turn to do a recap.
Well, it depends how good you are.
Yeah. The omens are not good right now, but I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to recap the whole race in just 30 seconds. They said it couldn't be done. I'm going to try my darndest. Please bear with me as I give this a go. The Italian Grand Prix, the home race for Ferrari, and don't forget Toro Rosso. But it was Charles Leclerc on pole. It was Charles Leclerc winning and leading the race very early on.
20 seconds.
From Lewis Hamilton. Is he going to win? He probably will, but he won't because he's spun off the track. And Valtteri Bottas, he's got a good tyre strategy. He's going to challenge him at the end. Can't quite get it done though. What the hell's Vettel doing? He's off the track. He's going to crash into Stroll. Oh my God, what's he doing? And then, pretty good race from Daniel Ricciardo coming in for P4 and Hülkenberg right behind him. Great race from Renault, 4th and 5th. It's like you were there. It's like I was there. I really felt, you know what? I really felt that. That would have made, in fact, the best ones are when it feels like you don't need to do the show after the 30-second recap. I reckon you touched on everything, mate. Well done. Certainly touched on several drivers. Got some names correct. That's good. A little bit of action. And got the positions correct, which is what you want from a race recap. To me,
our show is known for its accuracy. That's
so
probably our number one tenet. It's in the podcast description, right? The most accurate Formula One podcast on the airwaves. Airwaves? Podwaves. I'm going to say podwaves. But Charles Leclerc came in from pole. Rod, everybody was like, oh yeah, you can do it over one lap, but can you do it over, I'm guessing, something like 54? And it turns out he can. But it does take a little bit of argy-bargy. And that was the first point I wanted to talk about, Rod. When he got under extreme pressure and Hamilton was chasing him quite hard, did you feel like the black and white flag was the right call there when essentially Leclerc kind of, did he shove him off the road? He definitely didn't leave him a whole car's width of space, Hamilton. But instead of getting a penalty or even going under severe investigation, he just got hey mate, black and white flag, don't do that again. So what was your read on that?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in just that moment. And I think this is really like, I feel like I say this a lot, but this is the thing that you could spend an hour talking about. Yeah, I know that if you're a Hamilton fan, you're probably like, what? Give him a penalty, knock him out of the race, black flag him. That was against the rules. I think on first sight, I was like, that's a bit harsh. But immediately I was thinking, wait a second. Like when Leclerc was leading in Austria and Verstappen pushed him off the track and even made contact with him and Verstappen got nothing and got to keep his win, I was like, no, this is the way we've decided it is. The drivers can do this. And I think it's fine for him to do that. So I think there's been a lot of people throwing their hands up in the air saying, well, it should have been a penalty. Obviously, we saw Vettel get a penalty in Canada when he was sort of pulling a similar move, frankly, against Hamilton. And people were like, but we don't want penalties deciding wins. So apparently, a few races ago, the stewards told all the drivers, look, you guys want to drive harder? That's great. We're going to reintroduce this thing. It's always been on the table, but we just sort of had it in our pocket for a long time. Going to reintroduce this black and white flag thing. Apparently one was shown to, I think it was Pierre Gasly in Spa. So it's not like this was even the first time it had been used in recent time. And, I think ironically, if you look back, I think the last time it was used was in 2010 and it was shown to Lewis Hamilton for weaving in the braking zone. So, ooh, the irony. But look, I don't think Hamilton was very happy with that move at all. And then afterwards he said, well, look, I'm just going to go and talk to Leclerc and say, look, that's how you want to drive. That's fine. If you think that's okay, just be ready for when I do that to you. That's all. And I think that
be ready when I crash into you and take you out, and we both lose because I'm winning the world championship by so many points. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to him. But I think that the exact same attitude that Hamilton has after this race would be, I would say, the same attitude that Leclerc had after Austria. And he's like, I'm not letting any more victories be taken away from me for that. If I crash, that's on me. If the car blows up, that's on the team. But I'm not going to let anyone just cruise past me anymore. And that's what happened. This precedent was set weeks ago. Tell me how you saw it, though.
No, it seems like that most drivers are taking this. They've got it kind of black and white in their mind, which is that if I'm in front in the corner, then it's my corner. I get the racing line, and if you're there, then get out of the way. I'm going to leave, as long as there's not a wall there. If there's a little bit of runoff, or if it's just kind of grass, or even just a little bit, as long as you're not going to, we're not both going to get taken out, you're going to have to give me the room because you didn't finish the overtake. And I think that's the thing that's really getting me this season is that drivers who are trying to make an overtake keep putting themselves in bad situations and then saying, but he didn't leave me space. Where's the space? It's like I wasn't quick enough or fast enough to fully make a move happen. But if I just keep my car kind of half the car's width behind but kind of next to, then they have to be in the disadvantage and I get to take the racing line because I'm in the wrong spot, though. It doesn't seem to make any sense. So I thought it was very good racing. I think it's great that they didn't touch and they didn't take each other out because that would have been a real problem. But I think that Hamilton was having to... Yeah, go for it.
No, I was going to say that one's interesting because after the race, Hamilton did say that if it wasn't for him wanting to win the championship, he would have just kept his foot in, kept his car straight, and they would have hit each other, which I just straight up don't believe. And that's just more just rubbish. I just don't, you're always going to move out of the way. You're not sitting there in 1/100th of a second thinking, should I just let this guy hit me or should I swerve out of the way because of the championship? Yeah, I think I'll swerve. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's... it's almost silly in those, as you said, those 1/100th of a second decisions for drivers to say to be quizzed on them afterwards, or even talk with any idea afterwards. We'll come to the spins and re-entering of the tracks in a second, I'm sure, after this one. But it's a similar scenario where that Charles Leclerc in this circumstance is taking the racing line because he probably can't see super well where Hamilton is, and it's not. He doesn't have to give that line up. If you could argue the black and white flag is more about like, okay, you're driving right on the edge here, then that's I think that's a good use of that flag, and I think we could probably see more of that. But Hamilton was also complaining, like every single driver does who is chasing someone. It seems like every single driver doesn't like defensive driving when they're the one being defended against.
Yeah.
Because every single time Leclerc was all over the track, but legally all over the track. He would sit in the middle of the track, coming up to a curve, then take the inside to brake, and then sweep across to the racing line to defend. Like, they're all legal moves. You might not like it because it means, as the driver who's trying to overtake, that you can't just kind of put your car in the opposite space and hope they don't hit you. You know that it's not, you have to try and make a genuine overtaking move. And I think that the most frustrating thing for both Mercedes this weekend, but especially Lewis Hamilton, is that he just couldn't catch Leclerc. He just wasn't fast enough. That Ferrari in a straight line was so unbelievably fast that with DRS, the slipstream, that massive toe down the straight, even with a great launch off Parabolica onto the straight, the Ferrari would still just kind of drive off into the distance. It's been a while since I've seen that kind of power differential in front of a Mercedes. And it would have just incredibly frustrated Hamilton enough that he then made a mistake and Bottas got through. Do you want to talk a little bit about Bottas now?
The only last point I was going to make about the black and white flag, in particular the people who say, well, showing Leclerc the black and white flag is to give him the green light to do moves like that, I think that they misunderstand what the black and white flag actually is for and means. What it is a signal from the stewards that is unsportsmanlike driving. Each driver in a race can only be shown that flag once before getting a penalty. So I feel like that is really strongly saying, do that again and you'll get a penalty. So that's the opposite of saying you can do that all day long and get away with it because this is Italy and we're going to let the Ferrari driver win, which another nonsense argument. So yeah, that's, I feel like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with you. I have no problem with it, and I'm glad that I'm not going to say that the right man won, but I was glad that incident in isolation didn't get any worse than it did, and I was pleased to see Leclerc go on to win for the sake of the Tifosi who have waited a long time for a Ferrari home win. And yeah, I mean, if there were other challenges from Hamilton or Bottas even, and he did the same thing again and he got a penalty, I would say, well, that's fair. That's how the rules are written, and so shall it be done. Did you say you wanted to talk about Bottas next? Yeah,
there was a moment where Bottas's engineer got on the radio and said, all right, this is yours to win, mate, go and do it. And there was a lot of chat amongst pundits. Nico Rosberg, I think, said after the race that Bottas just isn't the guy to do this with. I thought it was kind of the perfect summary of Valtteri Bottas in that he was faster. And, as you've quite handily written in the notes, he was probably on the best strategy in the end, had the tyres at the end. The faster tyres was probably on the faster strategy overall, but couldn't really make it work. And I think this is where Mercedes just probably have a problem with Valtteri Bottas. And I can imagine that if Esteban Ocon has a good time in the Renault next season, that maybe he will end up with that Mercedes seat maybe sooner rather than Bottas would be happy with. Do you think that that's a good summary of where Bottas is at in his career, or do you think if Hamilton couldn't do it, there was no way Bottas was going to be able to do it?
I think that Bottas always seems to find himself behind Hamilton and often finds himself on the subpar strategy, and I guess in recent times, Hamilton has been kind of close to the leader, challenging, wanting to stay very, very close and keep the pressure up. I guess he had success with that in Canada, for example. But when the leader pits, Hamilton often wants to pit as well, and he often questions, if they ask him to go long, he often questions it, even though, we've seen races where stretching the first stint out and being on fresher tyres later has definitely worked to his advantage. And for whatever reason, I guess this time they were like, all right, Hamilton, if you want to try pitting when the leader pits, no worries, we'll try that. But Bottas was stretched out, and it turned out that he was definitely, I felt, in the dying laps on the right strategy. The question for me was not only was Bottas the right guy or in the right place to overtake Leclerc. The other question is, what would he have done when he pulled up behind Hamilton if Hamilton hadn't made a mistake and gone through the little zigzaggy chicane thing at the end of the first corner? What would Hamilton have done? What would the team have done? I mean, seems unlikely the team would have said, this Bottas guy, he's just going to bite the ass off Leclerc, so we need to let him go. Don't slow him down. Hamilton later said, yeah, of course, I was thinking that anyway, but it's like, were you though? I just don't know. So, yeah. And I totally agree. That's why I laughed when you said that about the radio call to Bottas. Like, come on, man, this win's yours. Just get out there and win it. It's like, no. He needs things to go his way before you tell him something like that. When things are not really going his way, telling him that just, I think, introduces doubt rather than alleviates it.
Yeah, and we're holding him up against the best driver of this generation.
That's true.
You know, that's true. It's always going to be difficult, and I kind of mean that by, like, if Hamilton couldn't make it work, he's probably the guy there who could make it work. Bottas was always going to struggle, even though it was a much faster strategy, it seemed at the end. But I think it shows, you could hear it in Leclerc's reaction on the radio as he was driving around on the kind of that post-win lap. I've never heard him scream like that. He's usually quite calm and cool, but to hear him just like screaming into his helmet, just like but basically for 45 laps he was defending, it felt like.
Yes, that's true. That's definitely very true. The other thing that comes into play is that, yes, it wasn't his maiden victory, but the emotion was very subdued in Spa for obvious reasons. And, this was the one that he could finally really enjoy. This was one that really meant something to him. So he finally was able to have that cathartic experience.
Yeah, a great race weekend where you could easily level the win at his feet and say that was your work. Because when you hold him up against his teammate, you could argue the opposite is true.
I was going to say, I don't know which angle you want to get into this one from. Do you want to just start with the Vettel spin, or do you want to go straight to the question of how the drivers stand within the team? But, it obviously doesn't hurt when you're a Ferrari driver and you win in Monza. Vettel did not win at all. Struggled. First of all, you would expect the Ferrari to lock out the front row in qualifying. There was that farcical qualifying, which I don't know if you heard about or saw, but it was nonsense. And at the end of Q3, 8 drivers were on the track trying to set a time and none of them could because they all got timed out. And with Vettel starting in 4th and a safe formation almost, start, he was gonna struggle a little bit. And like you say, Leclerc had an amazing drive to pull away from the Mercedes lap after lap after lap. But Vettel, for the first handful of laps, couldn't get anything done. Makes a mistake with no one around, purely off his own bat. Spins, of course, because of course he spins. Reset the races since Vettel has spun counter. And not just that, but winds up off the track, rejoins in the most stupid way that I've ever seen, and, hits another car, gets a penalty, doesn't even finish in the points. This guy is in trouble.
Yeah, there was an interesting back and forth in the commentary on Sky, which very few times do I find myself like trying to yell at this, like at my recording of the race.
Very few times?
Like, no,
I yell at the TV all the time.
Yeah, I generally sit there with an air of like, who cares? I've got my own format where I can yell and scream at my co-host.
That's kind of true.
But the idea being that because of the halo and because of the neck support, what's that called? The hands. Yeah, the hands. And they sit quite low in the car and they can't use their mirrors in that circumstance. That it was always going to be difficult to get back on the track. And all I could think back to was, and this is exactly what happened when Martin Brundle said, well, he couldn't see. So, at some point you just have to risk it and go because it's the only, it's, what are the chances that you'll hit someone? It's a good chance still, but, you just got to get out there and hope that they get out of your way. And I thought back to my driving lessons, like when I was like 16, when I was learning how to drive, and there is you do a test in Victoria with like your theory test is on a screen in the in roads, and you're watching video, and then it says like you just click the mouse when it is safe to turn. So you're trying to turn right into across coming traffic, opposite if you're in the US. But there is a truck that's also on the other side of the road that's looking to try and turn the opposite way. So you can't see around that truck, and it looks clear, but the actual stage of the test is that there is never a safe time to go. So you're waiting, and the pressure's building because you're like, well, all these cars have gone. It's about to time out. Surely I must just click at some point to say that it's safe to go. But at the last second, a bike zooms past outside of your sight line. So if you'd ever clicked, it was never going to be safe. So the correct answer is to never click to go because it was never going to be safe to go. And that's all I can think about with Sebastian Vettel in this case is like, if you can't see that it's safe to go, you just have to wait, mate, or find a different time or a different way. Like maybe don't just drive straight back onto the track, or maybe just accept that you're kind of beached and like you fucked up and that you're not going to be able to get back on until you see every single person go, or you wait on the radio and they say, okay, the track's clear for the next 25 seconds, now go, whatever it is. But the sheer like arrogance to say, well, you know what? I've just got to go. And I'm not saying it's Sebastian Vettel's arrogance because, 5 seconds later, Lance Stroll does the exact same thing, having had it just happen to him, whereas he's probably just gone, well, if it happened to me, if Sebastian Vettel, king of racing, is going to do it, well, I might as well just flick back onto the track as well and give it a crack. It infuriated me twice that Sebastian Vettel, A, spins and he just goes, oh, well, just drive back onto the track and endanger other people's lives, but also just sheer stupidity. And I'm kind of done with Sebastian Vettel in that sense. Like I said it, I think in our last show, that it's like, are we even, or in our mid-season break show, like where do we place Sebastian Vettel now in the history of Formula One? Is it like Alonso that won a couple of world championships and then kind of didn't really nail it ever again? Is Sebastian Vettel just that? Because these kinds of errors are schoolboy errors. Like schoolboy of Formula One grid, Lance Stroll made the same error coming back onto the track, but at least he didn't spin on his own, on his own. So Sebastian Vettel, I've run out of patience with him, and I think get him out, get someone else in that Ferrari.
It reminded me, you said what it reminded you of, it reminded me of a Bucks party that I went to a couple of years ago where we went go-karting for the day. And, I watch a lot of racing. I understand racing lines. I know I'm not the fastest guy on the track, but I also know to kind of wait, pick my moment and nail the guy in front of me, not just try and charge through. But I was getting really annoyed at other people who were just smashing into the side of me, and they were like, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, you're doing it wrong. I hate you so much. And it just felt a little bit like that, like, ha, 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 I'm going to get on the track, and I don't care if I hit you or not. The interesting thing for me out of it, I think, is thinking about Vettel and his career, basically, the last 10 years plus. He's always had success with teams where the team was built around him, and he's always been so good at just getting everyone in the team on his side and backing him. We hear about how he stays late, cracks jokes, buys, all of his engineers Christmas presents and all the rest of it. Just a super likable, nice, funny guy, different to the guy we maybe see in the media conferences and all the rest of it. But I just wonder what's happening at Ferrari at the moment, because they can't be feeling that great about his performance at the moment, and there must be a little bit of like, if he's walking around the corridor, you're like, yeah, hey, Seb. But not really like laughing, patting him on the back. Aren't we all having a great time here? This fantastic, established, luxurious Formula One brand. Not really loving life so much at the hands of Sebastian Vettel. And I think that's important in terms of what is he going to do? What does he do to rebuild that? And obviously at the moment, all the momentum is with Charles, and he's the real wunderkind at the team. So does he win grace with the team by saying, not officially, but I'm going to more or less do what I can, but support him as much as I can this year, because this year is clearly just not Sebastian Vettel's. The trophy won't have S. Vettel on it at the end of the season. But I just wonder if that's a way to just say, look, let's finish this season off as best we can together as a strong unit. Next year, we'll throw down gloves again, and all bets are off, and may the best man win.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad strategy. I mean, that does kind of wrapped in that kind of say, well, what is Sebastian Vettel actually bringing Ferrari now? If he's not bringing a level of consistency that a number one / number two, a shared number one / number two driver brings, like at least Kimi Räikkönen wasn't spinning off the track.
I was literally going to say the exact same thing. It really reminds me of when Kimi Räikkönen won the championship at Ferrari and then just went to sea, and all of a sudden Felipe Massa started winning races, and Räikkönen was kind of unceremoniously shown the door, let's say.
Yeah, it's because Sebastian Vettel, the difference is, and being the marketer that I am, I always tend to look at things through that lens, which is that Charles Leclerc is hot shit. He's attractive, he's smart, he's likable, he's young, he is everything that Formula One is these days. He's from the Max Verstappen age. And one of the big concerns around Sebastian Vettel was that he wasn't particularly liked even in German circles, German fandom, apparently, which is why the German Grand Prix is kind of struggling, because people, there aren't a huge amount of Germans who are I'm going to go to the German Grand Prix. He's not doing a huge amount for Ferrari from a brand perspective. Is he even that strong of a brand ambassador? I don't think so. He's traditionally pretty uncool. He's kind of nerdy. It wasn't even necessarily a great fit for the Red Bull brand from a argy-bargy kind of extreme sports kind of guy. And Max Verstappen kind of fits that mold as well. And at least Max Verstappen brings an entire nation with him, whereas Sebastian Vettel doesn't really have a strong fan base. I don't really know anyone that's hey, Sebastian Vettel, that's the guy I really like to follow in Formula One. Be interesting to see how much time he gets in the Drive to Survive Netflix documentary series at the end of this year, start of next year, because he's just not. He's turned into the elder statesman of Formula One, but without any of there's no passion there. At least when Fernando Alonso was aging and same with Kimi Räikkönen, they have passionate fan bases who love that driver particularly, but I've never really had that around the sport or any sense of that with Sebastian Vettel, which means that Charles Leclerc can kind of sweep up the entire Ferrari fan base immediately, no trouble at all, kind of take a lot of the vacuum that Kimi Räikkönen left as well, and just be he's the only Ferrari driver that matters. Sebastian Vettel kind of just slots into number two driver so incredibly well, but it doesn't suit him because he's also a 4-time world champion. So I don't really understand his place at Ferrari anymore, because even if he's bringing great data, that's not enough for someone who's probably earning that much, who is an ex-world champion, and who thinks that he's maybe the best in the sport, when I don't think that's really the case anymore. So yeah, rant over on Sebastian Vettel. But it wouldn't surprise me if he leaves the sport or takes a sabbatical before Lewis Hamilton does.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good call, actually. Vettel to leave the sport before Hamilton does. I mean, I feel like that's hyped up all the time, but he's going nowhere. He's got at least 3 more years to stick around.
No kids to hang around with, anything like that. Sebastian Vettel's got the family.
Yeah, well, as always with your rants, I find them entertaining, and I find your logic in this case flawless. So I will don't need to add anything. You said it all. I wanted to talk about Renault, though. Obviously, finishing 4th and 5th, their best result. Not just this year, but boy, this is their best result in a long, long time. And all of a sudden, you go to a power circuit, and all of a sudden that Renault starts to look really good. Not just the engine, but the chassis as well. And we've been talking this whole year so far about how Renault seem to have a great engine, except, here comes McLaren with their superior chassis, and frankly, more, in aggregate, more personality between the two drivers. Obviously, Hülkenberg's pulling down the average there. But, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Renault are looking extremely good. Obviously, Max Verstappen got wiped out of this race, but I think maybe we should that's a bit of a shame for, the Dutch fans who have been backing him lately, and he's been driving fairly well, but Albon still not quite on the pace, and Verstappen having to pit for a nose early in the scene just sort of ruined this chance of, say, a podium finish. But right there, to pick up the dregs, old mate Danny Ricciardo and good hair man Nico Hülkenberg, 4th and 5th. So it's just to say that obviously the engine can't be that bad when you get to a circuit that is basically like a plank of wood with a good engine and 4 wheels was going to do okay here, and Renault did okay.
Yeah, I don't really know where this came from. I was utterly perplexed that they could keep this up, because usually it would just show through the wash that, like, maybe, you know, Alfa Romeo would have a better performance here.
Yeah, you might think so, yeah.
Basically running the Ferrari package, that eventually that would tell. But I suppose this is why Renault like Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hülkenberg. They've both been racing a really long time. They know how to race these kinds of races. Daniel's won at Monza before. They were kind of out on their own towards the end. That, you know, this seems like the second half of the race, all they had to worry about was the leaders coming through them, and that was kind of it. So I'm very happy for them, and I think Renault would be incredibly chuffed with all of those points. The fact that neither of them had any mechanical issues, they didn't crash into each other, anything like that. They were like, hey, this is more of what we expected this season. Kind of like finishing somewhere between 5th and 9th. But both drivers in and amongst it, and a relatively quiet race. So, yeah, you also touched on Alexander Albon. I thought he did okay this weekend. You know, it was probably 4th was probably there for him if he was a little bit better or a little bit more experienced or had a slightly better run of luck. But these are the weekends where he should be walking away as the Red Bull number 2 driver and just going like, whew, got out of that one, kind of unscathed. No one was expecting too much of me, and I delivered some points, 8 points for the team, no trouble there, and hopefully just kind of fly under the radar and have no one talk about him.
Well, I mean, this was the first real test for him, and I think he did pretty well. And I think there's good things to come from him. Definitely feeling confident. Definitely, there seems to be just a bit of a good vibe at the team that, it might be a fake confidence. I don't know. Like, don't even mention Gasly. We've forgotten about him. You should forget about him too. Might be a bit of that. But, I think Albon is on a good track. And I think, when we get to circuits like Singapore, when we get to Mexico, we're going to start to see what he can really do. And, he's still proving himself. But boy, he's done fairly well so far. Not much else to talk about from this race, I don't feel.
Carlos Sainz not getting a wheel on properly.
Oh boy.
This always surprises me, right? Because when you look at it, you look at the replay and you say, well, yeah, like they let the car down off its jacks, so Carlos Sainz grabbed first and he was off. Like, that's what happens. This seems like something you should be able to practice for. It happens more regularly than I thought it should. Like, these are, it's kind of, this is what pit crews are for, like changing 4 tires. And I know it's about how fast you can do it, but 1 second extra to make sure that tire goes on, or even 5 seconds to make sure it goes on. Why is the rear jackman just like, hey, it's on, like no one's put their hands up, but let's just go, and just let him off, and off he goes.
And then more or less have to immediately retire the car. You can't even finish the lap and come back in. If your car has 3 tires, you have to pull over. You're not allowed to finish.
Yeah, that's right. It's immediately dangerous. So there was... You can tell how confused I am about why this happens at all, because you can tell that they're struggling. Is there not one other person who's in charge of, like, okay, I've got 4 green flags, put the back jack down, and off they go? Like, it's actually very rare, it seems. And this maybe is just maybe I'm being naive here. But a 3.5 second pit stop versus a 2.1 second pit stop at what is essentially a 1-stop race. And any race that's a 2-stop race, you can afford another second to make sure everything's cool. I actually don't really believe that teams are earning themselves that much of an advantage by having lightning fast pit stops, except when you're trying to pull the overcut or the undercut. The rest of the time, when you're just slotting into a good spot in the field, that 1 second isn't going to make any difference. And
not when the consequences are retiring the car. Yeah,
yes.
For sure. I mean, you'd rather them take 1 extra second every pit stop for the entire year than to have one single retirement, because that's just so costly.
Yeah, what are they going to do? 55 or something, like pit stops over the year, maybe?
Sure. Oh,
At
not
most?
even that. No way.
Yeah, maybe 40?
Probably closer to 30, yeah.
Yeah. That's 30 seconds extra. I think you'd probably be happy with that, right?
Good maths.
So, quick maths.
Yeah. I did like I think it was the front right, and it was, the car drove away, and then the guy decides to cross his arms, like, don't go. And then, and then he holds them there as if I said, what are you doing? Don't. I've got my arms crossed clearly, and I clearly said don't go. And it's like, mate, you did it too late, and doing it when he's already down the pit lane doesn't help anybody. Just...
Yeah. No.
We all just need to hang our heads now and just pour one out for our old mate, CJ.
It's like when batsmen get bowled and they practice the same shot again at the crease. It's like, just walk off. Don't worry about it.
You should have done. You should have hit the ball. That's what I meant to do. I'll try next time to hit the ball, everyone. Oh, boy.
Amazing.
Well,
but overall, exciting race watching... I will happily watch two Mercedes chase down Charles Leclerc every race for the rest of the season. That was very engaging.
Just more of people chasing down the leaders and putting the pressure on. I like seeing that. And whether we get there or not, it is an exciting way to finish a race because the stakes are so high and you just don't know what's going to happen. Well, Zach, that's the end of the race talk. Let's get into the fantasy update, the fantasy focus. If you're a fan of seeing us do poorly, it's terrific news for you. We both fell one place in the league, this round. So we really seem to be in lockstep with each other, either both doing moderately okay or moderately poorly.
I just think it would be a bit of a faux pas if we were really good at this game. I think it would be upsetting to the fan base, to the Super License universe. I'm not calling it a fan base; it's a community. Formula One fans. I'm glad that we are fair to middling, because if we were really, really good at it, I think that would be mean and horrible, because F1 is all we do, Rod. We don't have jobs, anything like that. We just focus fully on Formula One every second of every day. So, we have to, we don't want to dominate.
Yeah, it's very gracious of us to do that. If you're looking for who the race, not the race winners, but the best performers from this round were, your top three are Genstar Racing by Janice, Ruckus Racing by Josh, and What a Harsehole by Lachlan. Really want to point out how close the competition was in the Italian Grand Prix, because the top two finishers were both on 178 points, and the third place man, Lachlan, was on 177 points. That's 1 point splitting three, not races, players. So, incredibly close at the top. Your bonus points for whatever it was, how many safety cars there's going to be, would have made the difference. And I want to call out the big movers in the league this week. Jumping 5 places is Chris, last name, and we're all hoping that his famous brother returns to F1 very soon.
Very nice. What a good week for fantasy. Well done, everybody.
Great week, everyone.
Singapore's a hard one for all of you, so good luck. You'll need it.
Very true. Speaking of a hard one, Zach, you may or may not have a hard super quiz for me. Let us play the jingle and find out.
We will accept a couple of questions. Should one only win one? Would one want to have won that one in round one?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm ready to be quizzed by you.
I love that theme.
Thanks.
One of the highlights of my fortnights is listening to all those themes with no pressure. And then I sometimes forget that we're doing the show, and then you come back in and cut to me, and I'm like, I'm on the show.
Make it your ringtone and just brighten up your entire life.
That's a way to wreck a song, though, right? Put your favourite song as your ringtone,
well, you're not wrong.
Then really wreck it.
And then when you actually hear it, when it comes up on your iTunes Shuffle, you think your phone's ringing. It's no good.
Yeah. When other people have their timer alarms as your wake-up alarm, so someone's alarm or reminder tune will happen at work, and you're like, oh, that's my morning wake-up alarm. Don't play that in the light of day.
Hated sound. It's horrible. Yeah, exactly.
The light of day is now touching this quiz, which is there's another, you alluded to it in the intro actually, that there's another Italian team that is not Ferrari. It's bloody Toro Rosso, mate. So, we're going to do a Toro Rosso quiz. Are you ready for the Toro Rosso quiz?
I have my fists, my hands have made fists, my shoulders are rocking back and forth. I'm so ready.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, a nice simple one in Super License quiz tradition. Toro Rosso translates from Italian to what in English? I've got 3 options here for you, Rod. Option A is baby bull. Option B is Red Bull. And C is the other bull.
I'll go B, Red Bull.
Yes, famously Toro meaning bull and Rosso meaning red. So, of course, it is bull red,
Bull red.
in classic Italian style.
Yeah, and if
Lotto
you're
meaning
watching
and
a
rail
race,
meaning rail.
if you're watching a race and you want to work out which one is Toro Rosso and which one is Red Bull, it's very, very easy. The Toro Rosso is the one with the words Red Bull written on the side.
Yeah, and on the spoiler as well.
Yes,
on the rear wing. The Red Bull that you're looking for is actually the Aston Martin branded car.
Yeah. Not the Aston Martins, though. Don't get that confused.
Don't
That's
get that
very
confused.
important.
God, this sport is so dumb. Question number 2, Rod. Toro Rosso used to be a different Formula One team. This is a standard thing that if you want to get into Formula One, you buy a team that's failing. So which team was Toro Rosso before? Were they A, Minardi, B, Jaguar, or C, Honda?
My guess is Minardi.
They were Minardi, that's right. Yes. After Minardi had been in Formula One for one of the, I think, maybe only second or third. They've been in Formula One for years and years and years.
They had.
And eventually the owner I can't remember his name, apparently his time in Formula One, he'd had 84 approaches to buy the Minardi Formula One team. And eventually... eventually Maurizio Arrivabene. No, not Maurizio Arrivabene. Dietrich Mateschitz. Sorry, got my 2 long names incorrectly done. Dietrich Mateschitz, the owner of Red Bull drink company, came to him and said, "Hey, we want another Red Bull team, but we're not going to buy all of Minardi. We're going to buy half of it, and then we can run it together." And then they bought it, and then immediately we're also changing the name though. And a bunch of Minardi fans got together and were like, we're going to sign a petition. We want it to be Minardi, Red Bull, something like that. And classic Red Bull fashion, no way. But you can make it Toro Rosso. You can put it in Italian because you love Italian sporting teams. So they kept it like that.
Those 84 offers to buy, they were all like watches, and then Dietrich Mateschitz comes in, hits the bite now, gets the team. Good play.
Bang. Done. Well played. So, question the number 3. The Scuderia part of Toro Rosso's name and Ferrari's name, so we have Scuderia Ferrari and we have Scuderia Toro Rosso. What does Scuderia even mean, Rod? Because... Don't worry, I've got 3 options for you.
Oh, thank goodness.
Option A is a stable of racing horses. Option B is a fable of knitting nanas. And option C is a rabble of failing drivers.
I mean, in Toro Rosso's case, it's the latter. In Ferrari's case, it's not, though. So that leads me towards the first option, option A.
A stable of racing horses. That is correct. So instead... So yes,
stable of racing Red Bulls.
Yeah, that's right, and not even horses. That would be better. That would be so cool if they managed to find the Italian name for, instead of a stable of racing horses, a stable of racing bulls. But apparently, Italian teams like to use Scuderia because it is about racing, a stable of racing horses, instead of not stable but garage or something. There's a different word in Italian as well, which is more about race cars, but Italians being Italians are passionate. It's like, no, it's the racing horses because it's horsepower, and it's tradition, and it's the vibe, and it's Marbo, and it's
Marbo,
like to use Scuderia. I wonder if Ferrari were pissed off when Toro Rosso also did that, and they're like, that's our cool, fun, passionate thing. We've even got a horse as our bloody emblem, and you're over there using the word Scuderia. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure they were like, hey, if you guys want to be Scuderia, Rosso, Ferrari, feel free.
Yeah, they basically were for a period, right? Question number 4, Rod. Which driver, I've only got 2 options here, so keep that in mind. Which driver has had the shortest time between leaving and returning to Toro Rosso? Is it A, Pierre Gasly, or is it B, Daniil Kvyat?
Oh, boy. Oh, this is a great question because both are pretty plausible.
Yeah.
I knew Daniil Kvyat was going to be an option. Didn't realise that Gasly was going to be an option. It's all right. Okay. Gasly's around, 11 races, 12 races, something like that. So Kvyat, I feel like he was dropped for 3 races and then brought back or something. So I'm going to go Kvyat.
It is Daniil Kvyat. Well sounded out. That's perfect logic. Yes. I mean, I had totally forgotten about this because when I came up with this question, I was like, well, it's obviously Gasly because he was dropped and he was promoted and then came back right away. But do you think you know the story here?
I mean, all I know is that they brought him in, they dropped him, brought him in, 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 dropped him, and then he was on a podium recently. So, you add all that up together, there just aren't that many races that could be in between.
No. So it's actually the US Grand Prix. Sainz had moved. So Sainz's move to Renault just happened that weekend, and Kvyat had been dropped like the previous weekend to be replaced, and because they had brought in Gasly and they also brought in Brendan Hartley, so it was like, oh, this is actually our driver lineup now. But Brendan Hartley is in, but Gasly has to go and race in the final race of the Japanese Super Formula Championship.
Yes, that's what it is.
So, and because Sainz has gone to Renault right now, we don't have anyone. So I guess it's you, Daniil Kvyat. He'd been away for, I think it was 3 races and came back for 1 race and scored a point, like totally randomly. And they're like, shit, did we maybe get this wrong?
It always makes it hard
they
for
did.
them.
Because he's come back and he looks pretty good again. So Daniil Kvyat, maybe the one maturing racer, and maybe he'll end up in a Red Bull next year as well. Who knows? If only to be dropped and put back to Toro Rosso to appear again in a future Super License quiz. Rod, question the number 5. What engines have Toro Rosso used during their racing history?
So for sure, Renault. For sure, Ferrari. Now Honda. Any more? Is that it?
There's one more. It's a tough one. And I think it was the first season they were in Formula One. And this this supplier gets talked about a bit when trying to when people say like, oh, we should level out Formula One or make it so that there is maybe an independent
Is it,
engine maker.
Cosworth?
It is Cosworth. Well played.
Oh, man, I feel proud that I got that one.
Yeah, I think you should, because I didn't know that. And I was like, shit, that was ages ago that Cosworth was supplying engines. But they're often talked about as the one that it's like, okay, if you wanted more non-manufactured teams to come into the sport, you could standardise it and have Cosworth. It's not
real, though. It's like when they talk about, Kumho becoming the tyre supplier or whatever. It's like, no, it's not really going to happen, though, is it?
Nope. No. Last question of the Toro Rosso, the other Italian team quiz. How many Italian drivers have raced for Toro Rosso, Rod?
You went and fucked me on the last question. All right. Let me think. I'm thinking right now.
Good. Right now.
Got to be a couple. Maybe at least one. Maybe... 2? Maybe 2. I'll go 2.
It's half as many of that, according to my numbers. According to let me just call in. Yeah, let me check the judges. It's just one. The judges.
Definitely one.
So if you think it's 2, who did you have in mind? But or could you think of at least one?
No. I can see the guy. I can see the guy. He's got like a real he's like a real Italian guy. He's a real Italian guy. Does really well now in Formula E. That guy. Ooh. And then I was like, but my memory's shit, so there's probably another one. That's my reasoning there.
Oof. So it's Vinantonio Liuzzi.
Felix da Costa.
Felix da Costa?
Yeah.
Is he Italian?
No. Give me the person's name. Who is it?
Vinantonio Liuzzi.
Antonio Liuzzi, yeah, of course.
Yeah, man, of course. Shortened his name to be Tonio Liuzzi. It's a good-looking guy. Had long hair at the back for a bit, and then shortened it up. Got a pretty classic mullet. I'm just looking at pictures of him now on Google. He looks quite bland, actually, in his pictures. He looks quite like he's just staring at the camera like, hey, man, I'm a racer. Don't worry about it. So, yeah. It's always funny, I think, seeing older people in Red Bull suits, because you never see that. Like, Mark Webber looks totally... Like, who let that dad drive a Formula One car? Like, in his Red Bull top. Where everybody else is just so young. They should be little boys. So that's it, Rod. The Italian, the other Italian team, Toro Rosso Grand Prix quiz. I think you got almost all of them right, except for the last one. I feel like you got all more right, so nailed it.
Which, bugger. Oh well.
Don't worry about it.
There's always next year, and there's always money in the banana stand, Zach. Maybe it's time for some final thoughts so that we can boot this baby home. I keep bringing up boot because Italy is shaped like a boot. I just hope that those references are not going over everyone's head. Final thoughts, Zachary. Anything coming to mind of the final variety?
Of the final variety? I mean, there is this interesting thing with Ferrari, right? That they are the heart and soul, like the beating heart of Formula One, but they don't win all the time. And it's just kind of odd But in the past, I've thought that that's kind of bad and disingenuous, and that sucks if you're a Ferrari fan. But when they get a win at home like this, it is like the whole sport rallies around it. Like, we all love that, yay, Ferrari, they won at Monza, and it happened to Charles Leclerc, who we all really like, seemingly. And look, the fans are mental, and look, there's flares, and like that's actually, I think that's the image that Formula One has in so many people's minds, that it's like hot, and it's Italy, and there's smoke, and there's burning rubber, and it's hard fought racing. I just felt like this race, I really regret that I wasn't watching it live, or that I wasn't there, or that kind of thing. It just felt like for a second that the old Formula One that people talk about was maybe back, and that when I am harsh on saying like there is no golden days and don't put the rose tinted glasses on, that maybe this is what we all kind of want. And there were good battles in the midfield, and there was chasing down at the front, and there were spins, and there were crashes, but not too serious crashes, and there were safety cars, but it was all kind of managed. Even having a black and white flag, which is something that would get waved more often in all of the other racing formulas and racing types, all seem to wave all these different coloured flags all the time. Like, you there, that was not fast enough, or you're too slow and you're too fast, and here's the maroon coloured flag because you took that corner a bit weirdly. Like, Formula One doesn't do a lot of that, but maybe getting back to the kind of like ragged racing soul of the sport is a good idea. And I think that Tifosi and Ferrari in Monza winning, that's true Formula One. So I loved that.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, because it's that old saying of Formula One needs Ferrari more than Ferrari needs Formula One. And I think, not necessarily for me, but I think for a lot of people, the scenes of Leclerc standing on the top of the podium there, an incredible podium that is right out there, and you don't quite feel like you could reach out and touch the drivers, but you definitely feel like you're part of something if you're on that straight. An incredible moment for sure. That's very good. I had bouncing around in my mind two potential final thoughts. One is just that Vettel is 3 points away from a race ban for penalty points, and he actually, I saw this week that since the point system was introduced, he has more than anybody. So I don't know. Maybe this shouldn't be such a surprise. He's a real bad boy.
Yeah. Who would replace him, you think, if he got a race ban?
That's such a good question.
Is it, who's that F2 driver that start with G? Oh God.
Is it good driver? Good driver?
Yeah, it's good driver. Good
driver. That's the guy. Yeah. This is like embarrassing that I don't know this stuff, but I just don't.
Ferrari. I'm going to Google Ferrari backup drivers, what reserve drivers?
Would they pull in Kimi or Antonio? Probably not Antonio.
I don't think they'd pull them from their own teams, right? Would they?
I don't know. I don't know if they're under contract anymore. They might not be able to.
Let me see.
Boy, that is a thought that's going to fester. But anyway.
Oh, Mick Schumacher. Of course they would.
Are you kidding? That is, that's an incredible call. Of course they would. Anyway, it'll be Mick Schumacher. Actually, I hope that happens now. The other thing that I heard is that there was a meeting of the elders of the Sporting Racing Council. And among their ideas for improving Formula One in future was mandatory 2 pit stops, and the introduction of refueling. And I'm very, very glad to report that both of those horrendously stupid ideas were voted down and kicked on the butt, and we're not allowed to let the door hit their asses on the way out. Don't want any of that nonsense, please. I definitely do want some changes to the tyre strategies and what tyres we use at races, but just mandatory 2 stops, that is junk.
Junk. Yeah,
yep.
I feel like there should be, I would prefer to have no tyre differences than have, just come with one compound, and then have mandatory pit stops, because I think that's a joke. Even mandatory timed pit stops is a stupid
jerk.
thing. It's an absolute joke, mate. You're a joke. Just a quick update on Ferrari reserve drivers. Pascal Wehrlein and Brendan Hartley are the Ferrari reserve test drivers. Wow.
Yes, wow.
Right? Apparently, Pascal
yeah.
Wehrlein went and knocked on Haas's door and was like, "Hey man, you got any sweet?
Can I have
that Formula Drive? You got any of that Formula One driver around? How much? I really need a hit, man. Poor guy, just came into the wrong team. Feels like everybody at the low teams got a chance at Red Bull at some point, or somewhere else.
Yeah, Much as I liked Brendan Big Heart Hartley, it sort of feels right that he's a reserve driver, but Pascal Wehrlein, he was actually quite good.
Pascal Wehrlein.
There you have it. You heard it here among the first. Well, Zach, the next race is Singapore. I think this is one of our favourite ones. Nice, tight, twisty, well lit up street circuit. We have been there. It'll bring back all the memories. And it's going to be a good time. And it's a good... Speaking of good times, he's at a good time. I'm going to actually get some sleep on Sunday night, which is very, very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice. Well, yeah, unless you have anything else to add, we might wrap it up.
Yeah, no, wrap it up. As soon as you said we've both been to Singapore, we've been together, I was just flooded with those great memories. But we'll save the reminiscing for the Singapore Grand Prix recap in about a week or so.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, until then, everybody, be cool, be good to each other, and... My name has been Rodney.
My name has been Zach, Be Kind Rewind Priest. And we'll see you next time.
No regrets, no regrets. Goodbye till then. See you after Singapore. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't remember whose turn it is.
It's you.